Good evening, night owls, and welcome back to survival horror ambience, where the night shifts are long and the company questionable. Tonight we leave the comfort of shadows and enter the fluorescent glare of a lonely convenience store. Our protagonist thought it was just another quiet night, but the night has a way of teaching lessons, sometimes the hard way. Grab your coffee, tuck your keys close, and remember, not all danger hides in the dark. Some strolls in wearing a hoodie. This, my friends, is Midnight at Main Street Market.
The clock ticked past midnight. Alex Harper, early 20s, new to the night shift at Main Street Mart, leaned back in the chair behind the counter, wiping sleep from their eyes. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly, and the hum of the refrigeration units made the aisles feel almost alive. It was a quiet Tuesday, almost too quiet. One more hour, then coffee, then I'm gone. The door chimed. Alex looked up. A man, hoodie pulled low over his face, walked in slowly. Nothing seemed overtly wrong except the way he scanned the aisles without picking anything up. Evening, can I help you find something?
No, just looking.
Okay, weird, but fine. Just leave. Half an hour went by. The store remained empty except for the occasional car passing outside and the flicker of a light over the frozen foods. Alex's stomach tightened when the man didn't leave. The door chimed again. No one entered. Alex looked up. Sir, please, the store's closing in a few hours. You can't just hang around.
I'm not going anywhere.
Alex's heart pounded. Something about the way the man moved, deliberate, patient, almost predatory, made every shadow in the store feel alive. Alex grabbed the store phone and dialed the security office for a routine check-in. Nothing. The line was dead. Great. Perfect. The man shifted closer to the counter, never breaking eye contact. Alex noticed small details that made the skin crawl. The twitch of his fingers, the faint smirk, the way his eyes darted toward the doors and windows, as if counting exits. Every instinct screamed, "Get out!" Okay, just wait. Just don't panic. And then the man leaned forward, voice barely above a whisper.
You're all alone, aren't you?
Alex froze. The reality of being trapped in a night shift nightmare hit. The aisles, the hum of the freezers, the empty parking lot outside, all suddenly felt like a trap. This was no longer a quiet Tuesday. It was the start of something that could get very real, very fast. The clock ticked past 2 a.m. Alex's hands shook on the counter. The man had been wandering the aisles for nearly an hour, never picking up a single item. Every glance toward the parking lot made Alex's stomach twist. Just keep calm. Keep calm.
You know, it's just you and me here.
Alex's breath caught. Every instinct screamed, escape. But the layout of the store left no easy exits, just the front door, the side door to the stockroom, and the dimly lit aisles in between. Look! You need to leave! Now, I'll call the cops if you don't.
Cops. Sweetheart, by the time they get here, you'll be wishing you had paid attention to your instincts.
Alex's pulse was hammering. Thoughts raced. Stockroom exit, parking lot keys, the car. Then the man leaned forward, hand brushing against the candy rack, sending bars and chips clattering to the floor. Okay, now is it the time? Alex lunged for the stockroom door. Locked. Panic surged, heart thundering, breath ragged. The man's footsteps followed, slow, deliberate.
going somewhere?
Please, just leave me alone. Alex grabbed the keys from the counter, fumbled with the side door lock. The man was nearly on them, shadow and menace combined. The door clicked. Alex swung it open and bolted into the cold night. Rain had begun to drizzle. Neon lights of the gas station blurred as adrenaline carried Alex across the parking lot. The man paused at the doorway, hood shadowing his face. He didn't follow, just watched as Alex disappeared into the night. Alex didn't stop running until the city lights swallowed the horizon. Only then, trembling and soaked, did they allow themselves a shaky breath. When the police arrived an hour later, the station was empty. Nothing taken, nothing destroyed, except a few candy bars and a lingering sense of unease. Alex never returned to night shifts after that night.
Ah, the night holds many secrets, my wide-eyed wanderers. Some you can outrun, some you can't. But for tonight, Alex got lucky. Remember, when the night shift calls, always trust your instincts, and maybe keep the lights on. If this little tale of adrenaline and terror got your heart racing, hit that like, subscribe, and share with your fellow night owls. Survival horror ambience will always be here to keep you company when the lights go out.
A few years back, in my hometown in California, something happened that still haunts me to this day. It wasn't the kind of thing that should haunt someone, not really. But I walked right past a dead body. And that fact will never leave me. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I was with my grandma, heading to the Walmart we always shopped at. It was one of those routine trips, no different from any other. The same familiar sights, the same old parking lot, just two people going about their business like the rest of the world. When we got there, though, something was off. There was this smell in the air, a foul, disgusting odor. Not like trash or a dead animal, but something worse. Something that made your stomach churn. I remember glancing at my grandma, her wrinkled face scrunched up in confusion, just as I was. She didn't say anything either, but I could tell she noticed it too. We both shrugged it off, as if it were just a sewer leak or something, and went about our day. We walked into the store, the scent lingering at the edge of my mind like a bad memory, but we didn't think much of it. Life went on. You move on, right? That's what you do. You dismiss things, push them aside. The smell was gone by the time we went in, and we didn't think anything of it. A few weeks later, my grandma and I were sitting in the living room, watching the news. It was just another slow news day, the usual flood of local crime stories and whatever was happening in the world. I wasn't paying much attention until I heard the words Walmart parking lot come through the speaker. I turned to my grandma. She paused the TV with the remote, her face tightening. "What's that about?" "They found a dead girl in the parking lot," the newscaster said. His voice was flat, like it was just another story, just another body. But it wasn't. Not for me. "A dead girl?" I whispered. My heart began to thud in my chest. "Yeah, right here in the parking lot. The same one we went to just a few weeks ago. Police are investigating the cause of death. No one knows how she ended up there yet." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I froze. My stomach twisted into knots, and suddenly everything came rushing back. The smell. The terrible, awful smell we'd noticed that day. It wasn't sewage. It wasn't garbage. It was her. The girl had been lying there, probably in a car, probably for days, maybe even longer, and we had walked right past her. It was right there in front of us. That smell, it was like a warning, but I hadn't recognized it. My grandma hadn't either. We had been so blind, so unaware. We had been too focused on the mundane, the everyday, that we missed the one thing that could have saved her. The news continued, but I wasn't listening anymore. I was somewhere else, back in that parking lot, standing there with my grandma, walking past that car. I could see it in my mind now, the faintest impression of a rusted-out vehicle, the windows slightly fogged, the smell hanging in the air like a cloud that we ignored. What if we'd looked closer? What if we'd noticed the smell a little earlier? Would we have done something? Would we have called the police? Or would we have just thought it was another weird thing, like so many other weird things in the world? The guilt gnawed at me, the realization that I had walked past something so horrible without even seeing it. I had been right there, so close, and I hadn't known. How could I not have known? To this day, I still can't shake the feeling. I see that Walmart every time I drive by, and the memory of that smell floods back. I can't forget it, can't let it go. The dead girl in the parking lot, the girl we walked right past, has become a ghost that lingers in the corners of my mind. I'll never know what happened to her, but I'll always wonder if there was something we could have done. The delivery. It was one of those lazy, quiet afternoons, the kind where the hours tick by slow and steady, and nothing ever seems to happen. Until something does. I was sitting in the living room, flipping through channels, when a red truck pulled into the driveway, its engine rumbling like it was straining under some unseen weight. I didn't think much of it at first. A delivery, maybe. No big deal. But it wasn't the usual delivery van. No, this was different. A beat-up, old red truck with patches of rust along the fenders. The kind of truck that makes you think of a back road no one travels anymore. I peeked out through the blinds as a man stepped out. He wore a cap low over his eyes, and his clothes looked a little too big for him, like he'd borrowed them from someone much larger. He didn't knock, didn't even make eye contact with the house. Just dropped a package on the porch, climbed back into his truck, and left. Something about it felt off. It wasn't Amazon or FedEx or UPS, none of those. No branding on the truck, no uniform. Just a nondescript, shadowy figure and a package. My grandma had been sitting in the other room when she saw the whole thing too. Without a second thought, she got up, opened the door, and grabbed the package. She handed it to me, her wrinkled hands shaking just a little. "This came for your mom," she said with a small smile, trying to make it seem normal. But there was something in her voice, a kind of unease I hadn't heard before. I took the package, noticing the odd way it felt. It wasn't heavy, but it had a strange density to it, like whatever was inside carried more weight than it should. It was addressed to my mom's first initial and middle name, which was strange because she only ever used her first and last name when ordering things online. Still, it was close enough that I shrugged it off. I figured she had ordered something and it just arrived early. Curiosity got the better of me, though, so I gave my mom a call. When she answered, her voice was light and casual until I mentioned the delivery. "Wait, a package?" she said, her voice now cautious. "I didn't order anything from Walmart." My stomach did a slow roll. She went on to explain that, yes, she had ordered something, but it was from Amazon, and it definitely wasn't supposed to arrive yet. It was just some dark chocolate, nothing important, and Amazon said the order hadn't even shipped yet. But this package, it felt wrong. "Open it," she said, after a moment of silence stretched thin between us. I set the box down on the kitchen counter and reached for a knife. As I sliced the tape, my hands trembled. I couldn't shake that gnawing feeling in my gut, the kind that tells you something isn't quite right, but you can't place what it is just yet. The cardboard split open with a soft rip, and inside was chocolate. 3 bars of dark chocolate, just like my mom had ordered. But something was off. The packaging was generic, almost like it had been thrown together by hand. I picked up one of the bars, turning it over in my hands. The logo was right, the brand was right, but something about it felt cheap. Staged, even. I checked the wrapping again, and that's when it really hit me. There was no address on the box, no return address, no shipping label, nothing. "Mom," I whispered, my voice barely audible, "there's no address on this." "What do you mean?" she asked, the edge of concern now rising in her voice. I repeated myself louder this time, and I heard her breathing quicken on the other end of the line. "I only use my first and last name," she said after a moment, her words heavy with confusion. "Why would it have my middle name?" I didn't have an answer. The silence between us stretched long and eerie. All I could think about was that man, the one who dropped off the package. He wasn't from Amazon. He wasn't from Walmart. Hell, I didn't even know if he was from anywhere that made sense. But he'd come to my house, left something behind, and now it was sitting in my hands. And somehow I knew it wasn't just a mistake. I glanced out the window toward the street, half expecting to see that red truck sitting there, waiting, watching. But it was gone. or so I hoped. "Call the police," my mom said, her voice shaking now. "I think someone's been watching us." And that's when it hit me. Whoever it was, they didn't just know our address. They knew the small things, the things no one should know. My mom's middle name, when she'd ordered chocolate. And now they were leaving breadcrumbs, little hints that they were much closer than we ever realized. The hair on the back of my neck stood up, and the house suddenly felt too small, too quiet. I closed the box, my fingers shaking, and stared out into the empty street, if wondering just how far this thing went, and who was out there waiting for us to let our guard down. The Stalker from aisle 7. There's something off about Walmart at night. The aisles seem longer, the lights too harsh, and the people, well, let's just say you see things you can't unsee. I've been to enough Walmarts to know there's always at least one person that leaves you feeling unsettled, but nothing ever prepared me for what happened that night. It was the Thursday before Black Friday. You know the drill. People lining up, ready to fight over flat screens and blenders. My Walmart had extended hours, staying open ridiculously late to accommodate early holiday shoppers. The place was packed, even at 11 p.m., but not the kind of crowd you'd expect. It was a mix of exhausted parents, college kids, and some real strange-looking characters lurking around. I had one mission: grab the last laptop on a killer Black Friday deal. I saw it, sitting there on the shelf like a golden ticket, and wasted no time reaching for it. But just as I wrapped my fingers around the box, I heard a gravelly voice behind me. "Hey, I need that," the voice croaked. I turned around and came face to face with a massive man. And I don't just mean big, I'm talking 6 feet of pure, grimy filth. His clothes were stained, like he'd been wearing them for weeks. His hair was a greasy tangle of knots, and his eyes, God, his eyes. There was something wild in them, like a cornered animal. "I'm sorry," I stammered, pulling the box closer to my chest. "It's the last one." He took a step closer. The smell hit me then, like something had crawled into his clothes and died. His face twisted into an ugly scowl. "I need that," he repeated more forcefully this time. I felt my heart pound in my chest. I wasn't used to confrontations like this. He wasn't just annoyed, he was angry, like I had personally wronged him by taking that laptop. I really need this," I said, trying to back away. "I'm sorry, man." His face reddened. "You don't need it more than I do." He yelled loud enough to make heads turn. A few shoppers cast curious glances our way, but no one did anything. I could feel the tension in the air like static before a storm. "I'm sorry," I mumbled again, walking away as fast as I could, not daring to look back. He kept yelling. "You're gonna be sorry? You think you can take what's mine? You'll see." His voice echoed through the store as I made my way to the checkout line, gripping the laptop like a lifeline. A couple of people chuckled nervously, trying to make light of the situation. "Guy's off his meds," a woman behind me said, offering me a weak smile. I nodded, trying to brush it off, but my gut told me something wasn't right. I paid for the laptop and practically ran to my car, scanning the parking lot for that guy. He was nowhere to be seen. I breathed a little easier as I drove home, but a knot of anxiety sat in the pit of my stomach. I tried to shake it off, chalk it up to the weirdness of Walmart, but something about his eyes stayed with me. I got home, and the house was dark and quiet. My mom and sister were already asleep. I stepped out into the backyard by the pool, the air cool against my skin. It was peaceful out here, the stars shimmering above, and for a moment I let myself relax. I set up the laptop on the patio table, letting the soft glow of the screen pull me away from the memory of the Walmart freak. But then, the motion light on the side of the house flicked on. I froze, my fingers hovering above the keyboard. It was probably nothing, a stray cat or raccoon. We lived right next to a small patch of woods, so animals triggered the light all the time, but something about the timing set my nerves on edge. I stood up, peering into the darkness by the side of the house. Nothing moved, but the light stayed on, casting an eerie glow over the lawn. I went inside, locking the door behind me. Better safe than sorry, I told myself. Still, the unease clung to me like a wet blanket. Just as I was settling into the living room, the blare of a car alarm shattered the silence. My car alarm. I jumped up and looked out the window. Sure enough, my Cadillac's lights were flashing, horn blaring like a siren. I grabbed my keys and pressed the panic button, but nothing happened. Cursing under my breath, I stepped outside to shut it off manually. That's when I saw the car parked in front of our house. It hadn't been there earlier. It was an old beater, something you'd see at a junkyard, not in our quiet, gated community. And in the driver's seat, barely visible under the dim streetlights, was a figure. A big figure. My blood ran cold. I stumbled back inside, locking the door with shaking hands. I ran upstairs to wake my mom, my voice a frantic whisper. "Mom, there's someone outside. I think he followed me home." My mom's face paled, her eyes wide with fear. "Are you sure?" "I saw him at Walmart. He's outside." She hurried downstairs with me, peeking through the peephole in the front door. Her breath hitched. "Oh my God," she whispered. "He's right outside." I looked too, my heart hammering in my chest. The same dirty, unhinged man from Walmart stood on our porch, his wild eyes gleaming with something dark. The doorknob rattled. He was trying to get in. "Call the police," I hissed. My mom fumbled for her phone, dialing 911 with shaking fingers. "Please," she whispered into the receiver. "There's a man outside our house trying to get in." Then came a loud crash from downstairs, the sound of breaking glass. My sister screamed from the top of the stairs. My mom grabbed her, pulling her close as I ran toward the den. The window was shattered, glass littering the floor. I slammed the door shut, locking it, my heart pounding in my throat. I could hear heavy footsteps inside the house. A siren wailed outside, and I ran to the front door, flinging it open just as 2 police officers stormed in. They rushed to the den, guns drawn, and found him. The man hiding behind the couch, his eyes wild with rage. They cuffed him, dragging him out of the house as he screamed profanities at me, his voice guttural and twisted. "He's not coming back," one of the officers assured me, but I could see it in their eyes. They knew as well as I did. This wasn't over, and it still haunts me. Every creak, every shadow outside my window, because sometimes the monsters follow you home. The face on the chart. I remember those missing persons charts, the ones tacked up in every Walmart, every grocery store, like a grim roll call of people who just vanished. Faces frozen in time, eyes pleading for answers. But I never thought I'd see my own face on one. Not ever. It was a Thursday afternoon, not much different from any other. My mom, she was a single mother, always working hard, never really had time for herself. And me, the only kid in a world that often felt too big and too cold. I was just going to go grocery shopping with her. Routine, mundane, a break from the usual quiet of our home, or so I thought. We pulled into the Walmart parking lot about 20 minutes away from our house. The store was big, one of those sprawling boxes with flickering fluorescent lights and the smell of popcorn from the snack counter. It wasn't the kind of place you went for fun. We needed things, like always. As soon as we walked in, I felt it. That slight unease, like walking into a room where everyone's watching but pretending not to. My mom was already off, grabbing things from the shelves, so I wandered toward the wall near the entrance. Those damn missing people charts that always seemed to be plastered on the bulletin board. I never really paid much attention before, but today, something caught my eye. My heart froze. The world narrowed to a single point, and I couldn't breathe. There, in the middle of the chart, in a black and white photo that looked like it was taken in some long-forgotten era, was my face. My eyes staring back at me, wide and terrified, like I'd been caught in a moment of complete panic. I blinked, trying to make sense of it. "No," I whispered, but it came out more like a strangled sob. Someone was playing a sick joke on me. I felt my legs go weak, the blood draining from my face. The photo was me, my exact face, my exact hair. But it wasn't just my picture. It had my name too, my full name, first and middle. No way. I stumbled backward, my breath coming in quick, shallow gasps. Someone must have put it there as a prank, right? But what if they didn't? I turned on my heel, half dazed, and searched the store. Where was my mom? Where was she? The thought of her not knowing where I was made my heart pound faster. I found her in the dairy section, looking at cartons of milk. I couldn't say a word at first. My mouth wouldn't move. When I finally grabbed her hand, I couldn't stop shaking. I dragged her to the bulletin board and pointed at the chart, my finger trembling. "Mom, look," I croaked. She laughed, a little too loud, like she didn't understand what I was saying. "Honey, that's just a joke. It's probably some kind of, I don't know, game." "You've been with me this whole time, right?" I stared at her, my heart pounding in my throat. I wanted to say something, but I couldn't find the words. How could she be so casual about this? That photo had my face and it had my name. I tried to explain, to ask her about my dad, the man who was supposed to be my father, the one I'd never met. I had always been told he left her, that he wasn't part of the picture anymore. But something didn't add up. The way my mom had always told it, it didn't fit. She said he left. She said he wasn't around. But now, looking at her, something changed in her eyes. "I never told you he was dead," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She didn't respond, her face going pale in an instant. I knew that look. I had seen it before. It was the look she gave me when she was hiding something. The one that said, "I've been caught." We left Walmart in silence. My mind was racing, my stomach a knot of dread. My mom acted like nothing had happened, like everything was just normal. But I knew something was wrong. I could feel it in my bones. When we got home, I was still in shock. I didn't know what to think anymore. My mom, the woman I'd always known as my mother, was acting strange, like a stranger in her own skin. She told me to go to my room. It wasn't unusual. My mom often wanted to be alone after a long day, but tonight it felt different. The sounds from the kitchen drifted upstairs, a clattering, scraping. I didn't think much of it. I stayed in my room, trying to shake off the feeling of being watched. A few minutes later, my mom came in with a plate of food, rice and chicken. I didn't recognize the smell, but I was too tired to care. The second I took a bite, something was wrong. My head spun, the world tipping sideways. The room felt like it was spinning, and I blacked out. When I woke up, I was lying in the back of our old car. The headlights cut through the dark, illuminating empty roads. The windows were rolled up, and I could barely make out the blur of trees outside. It was past 2 a.m. I could tell because I saw the time on my phone. It was still my old flip phone, the one I'd had for years. My mom was driving, her face blank and focused on the road. She looked over her shoulder once, twice, and I pretended to be asleep. We drove through the night, the landscape growing more and more unfamiliar. The roads were desolate, no lights, no cars. My heart was beating so fast I thought it would explode. Then suddenly, she stopped the car. The engine went quiet, and the eerie silence of the night filled the air. My mom opened the door, the cold air rushing in. She dragged me out, pulling me by the arm. The branches scraped my back, the rough bark tearing at my skin. I was disoriented, stumbling through the dark. Where was she taking me? She didn't say a word. The woods closed in around us, and then she just left me there. She walked away, back to the car, and I saw her drive off into the distance, her headlights disappearing into the void. I stood there, alone, the cold air biting at my skin. My phone was still in my pocket, but I didn't have any proof. No one would believe me, would they? I called the police anyway. I didn't know what else to do. My mother had just abandoned me. Was she even my mother? The police came, but they found no signs of harm. No evidence that I'd been dragged through the woods, no proof that my mother had done anything to me. They took me home, and everything went back to normal, or as close to normal as it could be. But I still wonder, was she my real mother? Was there someone else out there? My real family? Or was I just made to believe all of this? I never told anyone the full story. But sometimes when I look at those missing persons charts, I wonder if my face is still there, or if it ever was.
I'll never forget the guy I met at the gas station late at night. Hey everyone, I'm posting this because I've been haunted by this memory for years and just need to share it. This happened about 4 years ago, and I still can't shake the feeling of what happened. I was driving back from a weekend trip to visit my family. It was late, maybe 2 a.m., and I had about an hour left to go. I was on a stretch of highway with very little around, just woods and the occasional farmhouse. My car was running low on gas, so I decided to stop at the one gas station that was open 24/7. It looked old and a little rundown, but I didn't think much of it at the time. When I pulled up to the pump, I noticed there was a guy standing outside the station, near the door. He was just standing there, looking out into the dark. He had a scruffy beard and was wearing a worn-out jacket. He didn't seem to be doing anything, not pumping gas, not moving at all, just staring into the night. I wasn't exactly scared yet, but something felt off. I've always been a little on edge late at night, so I decided to fill up quickly and get on my way. As I pumped gas, I noticed a man slowly walking toward me. His movements were strange, like he was either lost in thought or unsure of where he was going. He stopped just a foot away from me, saying nothing at first. I figured he was about to ask for a ride or some change, but instead he just stared. His eyes were bloodshot, and there was an emptiness in them, like he hadn't slept in days. Finally, he spoke. "I saw you pull in. You know you shouldn't be here. Not at this hour." I let out a small, uneasy laugh and said something like, "Yeah, just need to get home." But he didn't smile. He didn't react at all. Instead, he took a step closer, and a chill ran down my spine. "Not good to be alone out here," he muttered, his voice flat, distant. Not good at all. Whether he was trying to warn me or scare me, I wasn't about to stick around to find out. I hurried to finish at the pump, locked my car, and started to climb in. But before I could close the door, his hand shot out and grabbed my arm. "I'll see you again," he said, his grip unnervingly cold. I yanked away, slammed my door shut, and sped off without looking back. I didn't stop driving until I reached a larger town an hour later. When I glanced around, he was nowhere in sight. I never saw him again. I don't know what he wanted or why he said what he did, but I've avoided that gas station at night ever since. And I don't plan on ever going back. To the man from that night, I hope our paths never cross again. I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind where nothing ever really happens. It's not too far from the city, but at night, it feels isolated. Just rows of houses, the occasional streetlight, and a whole lot of silence. I have a habit of taking late-night walks when I can't sleep. I know it's not the safest thing in the world, but my neighborhood has always felt peaceful, almost boring. Besides, I usually stick to the same route, a few blocks around my street, a short detour past the park, and back home. Simple. That night, I left my house around 1:30 a.m. It was colder than usual, and the streets were unusually empty. No cars, no people, just me and the distant hum of the highway. I put in my earbuds but kept the volume low. I like being aware of my surroundings, just in case. I was about 10 minutes into my walk when I noticed him. A man, about half a block behind me. At first, I didn't think much of it. People walk at night, right? Maybe he couldn't sleep either. But something about him felt off. He wasn't just walking. He was matching my pace exactly. I slowed down. He slowed down. He slowed down. I sped up. At one point, I stopped completely and pretended to check my phone. For a second, I hoped I was just imagining things. But when I turned my head slightly, I saw him standing there, perfectly still, just watching me from a distance. That was enough for me. I turned down a different street, one I usually don't take, just to see if he'd keep following. And he did. By now, my heart was racing. I considered turning back toward my house, but something in my gut told me not to. I didn't want him knowing where I lived. Instead, I picked up my pace and walked toward the park. There was a small cut-through that led to another street, and I figured I could lose him there. The whole time, I could hear his footsteps behind me. Never running, never stopping, just keeping pace. The park. I took one last glance behind me. He was gone. I stopped walking, confused. There was no way he could have disappeared that quickly. There were no side streets, no alleys, nowhere to hide. It was like he had just vanished. I stood there for a few seconds, trying to calm myself down. Maybe I'd imagined the whole thing. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Then I heard something. A soft rustling sound, coming from the trees. I turned toward the noise, my stomach twisting into knots. The park was dark, but I could just barely make out something between the trees. A shape. A figure. And then, I swear on my life, it started crawling toward me. My brain refused to process what I was seeing. The figure in the trees wasn't walking toward me. It was crawling. Fast, low to the ground, moving in an unnatural, jerky way. The worst part? It didn't make a sound. No footsteps. No breathing. Just that awful, rustling noise as its hands and feet scraped against the dirt. I took a shaky step back. My body was screaming at me to run. I couldn't move. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what I was looking at. It wasn't the man from earlier. At least, I didn't think so. The shape was all wrong. The limbs were too long. The posture was wrong. Then it stopped, right at the tree line. For a moment, neither of us moved. I could feel my pulse in my throat, my whole body rigid with fear. Then, in one swift motion, the figure rose. It stood up. And that's when I realized something that made my stomach drop. It was the man from before, but something about him had changed. His posture was unnatural. His neck tilted at an angle that made my skin crawl. His arms hung limply at his sides, too long, too thin. And his face. God, his face. I couldn't see his eyes in the dark, but I could feel them on me. watching, waiting. Then, without warning, he took a step forward. That was it. That was all I needed. My body finally kicked into survival mode, and I turned and ran. I don't think I've ever moved so fast in my life. I sprinted through the park, my breath coming in sharp gasps. I could hear him behind me, not running, but moving. His footsteps too light, too controlled. I took the fastest route I could think of, cutting through back streets and alleys, zigzagging between houses, hoping, praying, that he wasn't still behind me. By the time I reached my street, my legs were shaking. I forced myself to slow down, glancing behind me one last time. Nothing. No movement. No sound. Just the empty road and the quiet hum of the streetlights. I practically threw myself inside my house, locking every door, checking every window. I spent the rest of the night sitting on my couch, listening, waiting for something, anything, to happen. But nothing did. The next morning I convinced myself I had imagined most of it. Sleep deprivation? A trick of the dark? Maybe I just freaked myself out. At least, that's what I tried to believe. Until I checked my phone. There was a notification. A missed alert from my doorbell camera. Motion detected. At 2:47 a.m., my stomach dropped. With shaky hands, I opened the footage. At first, I didn't see anything. The street was empty. My porch was empty. Just the dim glow of the streetlight. Then, at the very edge of the frame, just before the camera cut off, I saw something. A shadow, tall, still, standing just beyond the streetlight, watching my house, and I swear before the video ended, it took a step forward. It happened back in the mid-90s when my older brother and I were still teenagers. I was about 17 at the time, and my brother, Jamal, was 19. We'd spent the day driving through some pretty rural parts of the Midwest, taking a road trip to visit some distant relatives. The trip was supposed to be fun, a way to escape the city and spend time together. But it quickly turned into something neither of us will ever forget. We were coming up on sunset, and as we passed through small towns with names we couldn't even pronounce, we noticed the landscape becoming more isolated. It was the kind of place where everything felt empty. There weren't many people out, no one on the sidewalks or even cars on the streets. It felt like time was moving slower. Jamal was driving our old family car, a beat-up sedan. We were on a stretch of highway with barely any streetlights, and I remember the glow of the dashboard lights making everything feel even more secluded. We were used to city living, always surrounded by people, so the silence of the small towns felt odd. We didn't know the area well, but we figured we'd be out of it soon. That's when we came upon a small town that didn't look like much, just a couple of rundown buildings and some homes with broken fences. I don't even remember the name of the town. I think it was one of those forgotten places that no one really talks about. We were getting low on gas, so we pulled into a tiny, dimly lit gas station. There was only one other car there, an old pickup truck that seemed out of place. As we stepped out, I noticed the truck's driver watching us. He had a look on his face that I couldn't quite place. It wasn't hostility, but it wasn't welcoming either. I thought it was weird. Jamal and I were focused on getting the gas and moving on. We figured we'd just fill up and leave as quickly as possible. But then, as I stepped into the store to pay, I felt this uncomfortable tension in the air. The cashier, an older man, didn't make eye contact when I walked up to the counter. He simply took my cash and handed me my change with no words. "Anything else?" he asked, his voice flat. I shook my head, feeling the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I wanted to hurry up and leave. As I turned to head back out to the car, I noticed something strange. The other customers at the gas station, two older men standing near the door, were staring at us. They didn't make any attempt to look away, and their eyes seemed cold. Jamal was already getting back into the car when I walked outside, but before I could get to the driver's side, one of the men from the station came out. He was holding a can of beer in his hand and looked straight at me. "You'll need to keep moving," he said, his tone suddenly harsh. I froze. I didn't know what to say. His voice had that edge, like it was a warning more than anything. I glanced at Jamal, who was already looking at me, his face tense. Without a word, I got into the car, and we drove off quickly, both of us feeling the change in the air. We didn't talk much as we drove out of town, but there was a heavy silence between us. It wasn't until we reached the end of the road that I glanced back at the gas station and saw the two men standing at the door, still watching us. That's when I started to feel the creeping dread. Something wasn't right. It wasn't until we reached the outskirts of the town that Jamal spoke up. "I don't know, man," he said, his voice low. That felt wrong. Did you see the way they looked at us? I nodded. Yeah. It was like they looked at us. I nodded. Yeah. It was like we were not supposed to be there. At that moment, I realized we might have ended up somewhere we weren't meant to be. But I had no idea just how dangerous that realization would be. As we kept driving, the uneasy feeling didn't go away. The road had become even more desolate, with no street lights or other cars in sight. The atmosphere seemed to grow thicker the further we got from that gas station. It was dark, and the last remnants of sunlight had disappeared, leaving nothing but the headlights cutting through the night. Jamal was quiet for a while, gripping the steering wheel tighter than usual. I could tell he was thinking the same thing I was. Something about that town wasn't right. But we didn't say anything at first. Neither of us wanted to acknowledge how unsettled we both were. It didn't feel like just a weird encounter. It felt like a warning. After a while, Jamal broke the silence. I think we might have just been in a sundown town. I turned to him, not sure if I heard him right. A sundown town. What are you talking about? He looked over at me, his face serious. You've heard of those, right? Places where... I cut him off. Yeah, I know what they are. But I don't think that was what we were in. I mean, no one said anything outright. We could have just been imagining things. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just in my head. A sundown town, for anyone who doesn't know, is a place where, historically, African Americans, people like us, were not welcome after sundown. It wasn't always spoken openly, but the message was clear. Get out before dark, or else. As Jamal kept driving, the silence between us grew heavier. We kept going through that empty road, no signs of life anywhere. There were no towns for miles, and we were getting more and more anxious. That's when it happened. We were approaching a bend in the road when a set of headlights appeared behind us. At first, I figured it was just another car catching up. But as the lights grew brighter, a sinking feeling settled in. It wasn't just any car. It wasn't just any car. It was the truck from the gas station. The same one driven by the man who had warned us. My pulse quickened. I glanced at Jamal, and from the look in his eyes, I knew he was thinking the same thing I was. The truck wasn't just following us. It was tailing us. Close. Too close. The headlights filled the rearview mirror, making it impossible to see much beyond the glare. My chest tightened with unease. Should I pull over? Jamal asked, gripping the wheel. No, I said quickly. Just keep driving. The truck's engine growled behind us, the sound growing louder. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. I fought the urge to reach for the door handle, just in case. Jamal's hands tensed on the wheel. It's like he's trying to box us in, he muttered, pressing the gas pedal harder. The car lurched forward, the tires gripping the winding road as we picked up speed. But the truck stayed right there, matching us, refusing to fall back. The chase went on longer than I could process. Minutes stretched endlessly, each second heavier than the last. The road ahead was empty, swallowed by the dark. Just us and the truck, and it wasn't going away. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we saw headlights in the distance. A car, another car. At first, I thought it was just a mirage. But it was real. The truck saw the headlights too, and that's when it suddenly backed off. Jamal slowed down as we passed the car, but the truck stayed behind. I watched as it turned off the main road and drove off into a side path, disappearing into the night. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The adrenaline was still pumping through my veins, and I was trying to catch my breath. I turned to Jamal, my voice shaking. What the hell just happened? Jamal was white-knuckling the wheel, eyes wide. I don't know. But that guy was chasing us. He was trying to run us off the road. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. The fear was mutual. We both knew what had just happened, even if we didn't fully understand it. We had narrowly escaped something dark and dangerous. We didn't speak much after that, and as we finally got to the nearest town, we didn't waste any time getting gas or stopping. We didn't even look back. I don't know what the guy's intentions were that night. Maybe he thought we were someone else. Maybe it was something more sinister. Either way, I still think about it every now and then. That town, those people, the way everything changed when the sun went down. We never did find out who the driver was, and I'm not sure I ever want to know. But if I can offer any advice, it's this. Always trust your instincts. When something feels wrong, it probably is. And if you ever find yourself in a place that feels off, don't stay. Just keep moving. Let's not meet again, whoever you were. It was the summer of 1994. I was 16 and staying with my aunt for a few weeks while my parents were away on a trip. She lived in a small town near a park that had a walking trail, a couple of benches, and some wooded areas. Nothing too fancy, but it was a nice place to walk around and clear your head. One evening, around dusk, I decided to take a stroll through the park. I didn't think much of it. I'd done it 100 times before. I grabbed my Walkman, popped in a tape, and set off down the familiar path. The sky was turning that soft purple color it does when the sun's just about gone, and the air was warm but comfortable. As I was walking, I noticed a man sitting on one of the benches near the middle of the trail. He was in his early 30s, I'd guess, dressed in a denim jacket and jeans, though they looked a bit worn. His hair was dark, and he had these intense eyes that just seemed to watch everything. I didn't pay much attention to him at first, just kept walking, letting the music fill my head. But as I passed, I felt something weird, a chill. I didn't look back, but I could feel him watching me. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I brushed it off. It was just my imagination, right? After all, I'd walked this trail before and never had any trouble. But then I heard the footsteps. At first, I thought it was someone else walking, but when I glanced over my shoulder, I saw him. The guy from the bench. He was following me. I tried to keep walking, maybe a little faster now. My heart rate picked up, but I didn't want to panic. Maybe he was just out for a walk too, right? But then I heard his voice, low and smooth, just loud enough for me to hear. Hey. I didn't respond. Hey, wait up. I didn't stop. I kept my pace steady, focusing ahead. But I could hear his footsteps getting closer, matching my rhythm. Then, I heard a voice again. You're not from around here, are you? I turned my head slightly, just enough to see him. He was still a few feet behind me, his expression unreadable. His smile didn't reach his eyes. No, I said quickly, trying to keep my voice steady. Just visiting family. There was a beat of silence. You shouldn't be out here alone, he said, and there was something unsettling about the way he said it. It didn't sound like concern. It sounded like a warning. I picked up my pace, trying not to let the panic creep in. But I could hear him closer now. His footsteps were getting louder. And then it hit me. I didn't recognize this guy. He wasn't from the park, wasn't anyone I'd ever seen in town. He had no reason to be following me. And then I realized I was alone in the park with no one else around. I needed to get to the end of the trail. I kept walking faster, almost running now, my heart pounding in my chest. But when I looked back again, I saw he wasn't far behind. And then he spoke again. I'm not going to hurt you. That was it. The final thing that pushed me over the edge. I ran. I didn't look back. I ran with everything I had, legs burning, breath coming in quick gasps. I just kept pushing, my mind telling me to keep moving, get out of there. I finally hit the end of the trail and bolted for the street. The moment I was on the sidewalk, I turned back. There was no sign of him. I took a deep breath, my heart still racing in my chest. I stood there for a moment, trying to calm myself. I tried to tell myself I was overreacting, that maybe I'd just imagined it. But I knew I hadn't. I don't know why, but something told me to head straight back to my aunt's house, lock all the doors, and not look back. I didn't go near that park again. The rest of that night was a blur. I remember walking briskly home, my eyes constantly darting around, half expecting to see him appear out of the shadows. By the time I got to my aunt's house, I was in full-on panic mode. I locked every door, checked every window, and made sure the lights were on in every room. I didn't tell my aunt what had happened. I didn't want to sound paranoid, and part of me still thought I might have been overreacting. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The next day, I found out I wasn't the only one who'd had a close call in that park. I was scrolling through the local newspaper's website when a headline caught my eye. Man arrested after attempted abduction near park. I froze, reading the article carefully. The details were chilling. It described a man in his 30s, wearing a denim jacket, who had been lurking near the park, approaching women and making them feel uncomfortable. One woman had even reported that he tried to grab her arm before she managed to escape. The article mentioned that he'd been arrested a few days after the incident, though it didn't name the woman who had been the victim of the attempted abduction. I felt sick to my stomach reading it. That man, the one I had brushed off as just creepy, was the same person who had been stalking the park. He'd been watching me. I showed the article to my aunt later that day, and she immediately knew who I was talking about. Apparently, he'd been in and out of trouble for years. He was one of those people everyone kind of knew about, but no one ever really paid attention to, until now. My aunt seemed genuinely concerned, but she tried to comfort me, telling me I was lucky I had gotten away when I did. I didn't feel lucky, though. I felt shaken, like I had narrowly avoided something much worse. Weeks later, I found out more. The man, whose name was Kyle Foster, had been arrested in connection with several similar incidents in neighboring towns. He wasn't just some creepy guy who liked to scare women. He had a long history of harassment and violence. It turned out that he'd been released from a nearby prison not long before the incident at the park. They had caught him after the abduction attempt, and once the police started piecing things together, they realized he had been lurking around multiple parks and trails for weeks, targeting vulnerable women. It felt surreal to know that the man I had brushed off, the man I had walked past thinking he was just some guy in a park, had been actively looking for someone to hurt. I kept thinking about what would have happened if I hadn't run that night. Would I have been his next victim? It was a chilling thought, and for a while it felt like I couldn't escape it. To make matters worse, I heard from a friend of mine that a local woman had been attacked just days after I encountered him. She'd been walking her dog on the same trail, and Kyle had approached her in the same manner. Fortunately, she'd fought him off long enough to escape and make it to safety, but it could have been much worse. Tried not to let it consume me, but the anxiety never really went away. Every time I heard a noise outside or saw someone standing in the distance, my heart would race. I couldn't help it. A few months later, Kyle was convicted and sentenced to a long prison term. His name started to fade from the headlines, but I would never forget how close I came to being one of his victims. To this day, I still can't go near that park without getting nervous. I'm more cautious now, always aware of my surroundings. That night, the strange man in the park taught me a hard lesson about trust, intuition, and the reality that not all strangers are harmless. Let's not meet again. I've worked a lot of late-night jobs, but nothing quite like the graveyard shift at a 7-Eleven in Las Vegas. Most people assume the toughest parts are the drunks, the gamblers down on their luck, or the occasional shoplifter. And yeah, those moments aren't great. But they don't compare to one particular night, one that still makes me uneasy when I think about it. It started like any other shift, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. The hours when time feels blurry, and the people who wander and sometimes don't seem quite real. Around 2:30 a.m. I was leaning against the counter, half watching the security feed and half scrolling my phone, when I noticed something unusual. A guy had been standing outside near the gas pumps for a while, probably 20 minutes or so. By itself, that wasn't too weird. Maybe he was waiting for someone, taking a break, or just lost in thought. But something about him unsettled me. He stood too still, just watching the store. I glanced up from the monitor and looked through the glass doors. He was still there. A tall, thin guy in a hoodie, hands tucked into his pockets, not moving. I sighed, figuring I was in for one of those late-night conversations, the kind where someone rambles about government conspiracies or the meaning of life. Standard night shift stuff. But he didn't come in. He just kept watching. Another 10 minutes passed, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It wasn't fear exactly, just a deep unease, like my instincts were picking up on something before my mind could catch up. Then, without warning, he turned and walked away. I let out a breath. Maybe he'd just been lost in thought, or maybe he decided to head somewhere else. Either way, I tried to brush it off and went back to watching the monitors. Still, something about it. And I heard the beep. The chime of the front door opening. I looked up, expecting to see the guy in the hoodie. But it wasn't him. It was a woman. Mid-40s, dressed in an oversized hoodie and sweatpants. She looked normal enough, except for one thing. Her face was pale. Not in the sickly way. In the scared way. She didn't come to the counter. She didn't even acknowledge me. She just walked straight to the back of the store, to the cooler section, and crouched down, half hiding behind the shelves. I frowned. "Are you good?" She didn't answer. I stood there for a second, debating whether I should press her for an answer. Then the door chimed again. I turned, and there he was, the guy in the hoodie. But now he wasn't alone. 2 other men followed behind him. One tall and broad, the other short and wiry. They spread out immediately, moving through the aisles like they had a purpose. I felt my pulse spike. I've dealt with plenty of sketchy people before, but something about this felt wrong. The woman in the back wasn't shopping. She was hiding. And now I had 3 guys who had been lingering outside suddenly coming in together. My gut was screaming at me. I reached under the counter, pretending to adjust something, but really I was checking that the silent alarm button was still there. My manager had warned me to only press it if I was sure something was happening. I wasn't sure yet, but I was getting close. Then, one of the men, the broad one, came up to the counter. He set a single pack of gum down. I rang it up, forcing my voice to stay steady. "That'll be $1.50. He didn't reach for his wallet. Instead, he smiled. Not a friendly smile. The kind of smile a wolf gives before it pounces. "You here alone?" he asked. I felt my stomach drop. I kept my expression neutral. "Nah, My coworker's in the back. Total lie. I was alone, but I wasn't about to tell him that. His smile didn't fade. Haven't seen him. I shrugged, trying to look as bored as possible. They're on break. He tapped his fingers on the counter, still smiling. Then he turned his head slightly and gave a barely noticeable nod to his buddies. That's when I knew. Something bad was about to happen. And I had about 5 seconds to figure out what to do. The wiry guy grabbed the woman's arm. She struggled, trying to pull away as he steered her toward the door. "Help me," she called out, her eyes pleading. "Please don't let them take me." The broad guy shifted closer to me. I gripped the bat and swung, not at him, but at the cigarette rack behind the counter. The metal shelves rattled and crashed, sending packs of cigarettes scattering everywhere. It was just enough of a distraction to make him pause. I took the opportunity and moved. Hopping over the counter, I rushed toward the wiry guy. He let go of the woman just as I swung, and the bat clipped his side. He stumbled back, startled. The woman didn't wait. She took off, running out the door and disappearing into the night. The broad guy recovered quickly, reaching into his pocket. I didn't stay to find out what he had. Turning on my heel, I bolted for the back exit, sprinting through the stockroom. My heart pounded as I pushed through the door and hurried down the alley, ducking behind a dumpster. I listened. A car engine revved, tires screeching as it pulled away. After a few minutes, when everything seemed quiet, I cautiously made my way back toward the store. By then, red and blue lights flashed across the parking lot. The cops had arrived. I told them what had happened. The woman, the men, the commotion inside the store. They checked the security footage, took my statement, and then asked something I wasn't expecting. "Have you ever seen the woman before?" "No." Then one of the cops looked at his partner and said something that made my blood run cold. "Fits the description. That's the third one this month." "The third what?" I asked. The officer hesitated, then sighed. "Women going missing. Usually alone, usually late at night. Witnesses report seeing men like the ones you described, but we haven't been able to track them down." I felt sick. She had gotten away. But for how long? I quit that job 2 days later, and to this day I still wonder if she made it out of Vegas alive. This happened in the late 90s, back when getting stranded somewhere meant you were really stranded. No cell phone, no GPS, just your feet, your nerves, and whoever happened to be around. I was 16, and my little sister, Emily, was 8. We had taken the bus to the mall on a Saturday afternoon, one of those trips where I was supposed to be responsible and watch her while our mom worked. It was a good day. We spent a few hours wandering the stores, eating food court pretzels, and playing in the arcade before heading back to the bus stop just after sunset. That's when I realized my wallet was missing. At first, I thought I had just misplaced it, maybe left it on a table or in a dressing room. But when I checked my pockets, my backpack, nothing. Gone. My stomach sank as I watched our bus pull up. I patted down my jacket one last time, hoping maybe I shoved a few bucks somewhere. No luck. The driver looked at me expectantly, but I had nothing to give him. I lost my money, I stammered. His face was blank. "Sorry, kid. No fare, no ride." I looked at Emily. She was already tired, rubbing her eyes. I turned back to the driver. "Please, we just need to get home." He shrugged and shut the doors. The bus hissed as it pulled away, leaving us standing under the flickering yellow light of the bus stop. Our house wasn't too far away, maybe an hour's walk if we took the most direct route. But that route included a stretch of road with barely any streetlights, flanked by dense woods. Normally, I wouldn't even think about walking through there at night. But I didn't have a choice. I took Emily's hand. "Come on, we'll be fine." She yawned but nodded, trusting me completely. The first part of the walk was okay. The streets were busy near the mall, and there were plenty of cars, neon signs, and people around. But as we got further, the sidewalks got emptier, the lights dimmer. After about 20 minutes, we turned onto the long road that cut through the wooded area, the only way to shave time off our walk. That's when I started feeling uneasy. There was something about walking past woods at night that made you feel exposed. The trees felt too close. Every crunch of leaves, every rustle in the branches made my skin crawl. Emily squeezed my hand tighter. "I don't like this," she whispered. "Me neither," I admitted. I tried to keep my head down and walk fast, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone. Not like some supernatural something in the trees nonsense. I mean real danger, like someone was watching us. Then I heard it. A faint sound, like a footstep, just beyond the tree line. I stopped. So did Emily. We stood there, listening. Silence. Had I imagined it? Was it just an animal? Then another sound. Closer. Someone was out there. Held Emily's hand a little tighter, trying to act like everything was fine. But inside, my heart was pounding. That sound. Steady, deliberate footsteps. Wasn't just the wind. It wasn't an animal rustling in the brush. Someone was out there, moving when we moved. I didn't want to worry Emily, but I couldn't ignore it. Stay close, I murmured. She nodded, holding onto my arm. We picked up our pace, walking a little faster. The road stretched ahead of us, quiet and empty. No cars, no houses, just the endless line of trees and cracked pavement. Then another step, a faint crunch of leaves. Something changed. The footsteps weren't just keeping pace with us anymore. They were getting closer. A nervous energy crept over me. Running crossed my mind, but I knew we couldn't. Not with Emily. She was only 8, and if we ran, whoever was out there might run too. That was worse. So instead, I made a choice that felt strange, but was all I could think of. I stopped. Emily tugged on my sleeve, confused. Why are we? I turned toward the trees. My voice was steadier than I expected. I know you're there, I called out. What do you want? Silence. For a long moment, there was nothing. No movement, no sound. Just the distant hum of the highway behind us. Then, another step. This time, onto the pavement. A man stood at the edge of the woods, barely visible in the dim light. He was tall, dressed in dark clothes, and completely still, watching us. He didn't say anything. Didn't move. Just stood there. I resisted the instinct to panic. If I reacted, Emily would too. If I ran, he might follow. Instead, I took a slow step back, keeping Emily close. That's when he moved. Not toward us, but around us. Slowly, deliberately, like he was trying to cut us off from the road ahead. I didn't think anymore. I grabbed Emily and ran. She let out a little yelp, but I didn't stop. We sprinted down the road, my pulse pounding in my ears. I could hear footsteps behind us, quick, heavy, chasing us. My legs burned, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. Then, headlights. A car was coming up the road. I waved my arms frantically, still running. The driver honked, probably confused, but they slowed down. As the car approached, I risked a glance behind me. The man was gone. The trees swallowed him whole. The car pulled up beside us. An older woman rolled down the window. Are you kids okay? I was gasping for breath, barely able to speak. Someone was following us. I managed. Her face changed instantly. She didn't ask any more questions. Get in. We didn't hesitate. We climbed into the back seat, locking the doors as she pulled away. My hands were still shaking as I looked out the window, scanning the trees, but I never saw him again. She drove us straight home. My mom was furious and terrified when she heard what happened, but by then, it didn't matter. We were safe. I never walked that road at night again, and I still wonder, if that car hadn't come when it did, what would have happened? This happened a few years ago when my buddies and I decided to take a trip to Eastern Europe. We'd heard great things about the vibrant nightlife and affordable prices, so we thought, why not? Our destination was Bucharest, Romania, a city known for its lively bars and clubs. There were 4 of us: Mike, the adventurous one; Jake, always up for a good time; Sam, the cautious planner; and me. We'd been friends since college and had traveled together before, but this trip was supposed to be special, a chance to let loose and enjoy ourselves. Our first few days in Bucharest were amazing. We explored the city's historic sites during the day and hit the bars at night. The locals were friendly, the food was delicious, and the drinks were cheap. Everything was going smoothly until our 3rd night. We started the evening at a popular bar in the old town. The place was packed with tourists and locals alike. As the night went on, we were approached by a promoter who offered us free entry and a complimentary round of drinks at a nearby club. It sounded like a great deal, and we didn't think twice about it. The club was upscale, with dim lighting and loud music. We were escorted to a private table and introduced to a group of women who seemed eager to join us. The drinks kept coming, and before we knew it, we were all pretty intoxicated. That's when things started to get hazy. I remember feeling unusually dizzy and disoriented. Mike, who could usually handle his alcohol, was slumped over the table. Jake and Sam were nowhere to be seen. The women we'd been chatting with had disappeared, and the friendly staff now seemed distant and cold. I tried to stand up, but my legs gave out from under me. The last thing I remember was a group of men approaching our table before everything went black. When I came to, I was lying in a small, dimly lit room. My head was pounding, and I felt nauseous. My wallet, phone, and watch were gone. Panic set in as I realized I had no idea where I was or what had happened to my friends. I stumbled to the door, which was unlocked, and made my way into a narrow hallway. I could hear muffled voices and the thumping bass of music somewhere in the distance. I followed the sound, hoping it would lead me to an exit. As I turned a corner, I bumped into a man in a security uniform. He looked surprised to see me, but quickly grabbed my arm and started speaking rapidly in Romanian. I couldn't understand him, but his tone was aggressive. I tried to explain that I was lost and looking for my friends, but he didn't seem to care. He dragged me through a series of corridors before pushing me into a small office. Behind the desk sat a stern-looking man who eyed me with suspicion. The security guard spoke to him in Romanian, and the man behind the desk nodded before turning his attention to me. "You owe us money," he said in heavily accented English. "What?" "No, there must be some mistake," I protested. "My friends and I were brought here by a promoter. We didn't agree to pay for anything." The man smirked. "Your friends have already settled their debts and left. You, however, still owe us for the drinks and the company of the ladies." I was stunned. It didn't make any sense. We were told the drinks were complimentary, and the women had approached us voluntarily. Something was seriously wrong. "I don't have any money," I said, my voice shaking. My wallet and phone were stolen. The man's expression hardened. "That's unfortunate. Perhaps you can work off your debt another way." Before I could respond, the security guard grabbed me again and led me out of the office. I had no idea what they had planned for me, but I knew I had to find a way out of there and locate my friends before things got even worse. Security guard's grip on my arm tightened as he led me down another dimly lit hallway. My heart was pounding. I knew I was in serious trouble, but I had no idea how I was going to get out of it. We reached a back door, and he shoved me outside into an alley. The cold air hit me like a slap. It was dark, the only light coming from a flickering street lamp further down. I looked around, expecting to see my friends, but the alley was empty. The guard stepped outside behind me and crossed his arms. "You work now," he said in broken English, motioning toward a stack of crates near a van. I shook my head. "I'm not working for you. Just let me go." He didn't like that. His expression darkened, and he took a step toward me. "No money, no phone, no ID," he said. "You don't leave until boss says." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. I needed to think. If I fought back, I didn't know if there were more of them nearby. If I ran, I didn't know where to go. But then I heard it, a faint voice in the distance calling my name. My head snapped toward the street lamp. I saw movement, 2 figures standing at the end of the alley. One of them waved. It was Jake, and next to him was Sam. They had made it out. The guard must have sensed my change in energy because he reached for something in his jacket. I didn't wait to see what it was. I bolted. I sprinted toward my friends, my legs weak but fueled by adrenaline. I heard the guard curse behind me, but he didn't chase me. Maybe because we were now in the open. When I reached Jake and Sam, they grabbed my arms and pulled me toward a cab waiting at the curb. "Get in," Sam yelled. I threw myself into the back seat, barely registering that Mike was already inside, looking dazed. Sam slammed the door, and the driver took off before I even had time to catch my breath. I never used to lock my doors during the day. I grew up in a small town in Louisiana, the kind of place where you knew your neighbors, and strangers stood out. Bad things happened elsewhere. Not here. That changed on a sweltering afternoon in July 2002. I was home alone, folding laundry in the living room, when I heard a knock at the door. Not a polite tap, but a slow, deliberate knocking, the kind that immediately made my stomach tighten. I wasn't expecting anyone. Peeking through the window, I saw a man standing on my porch. He wasn't someone I recognized. Average height, dark eyes, a build that suggested he worked with his hands. He was dressed casually, nothing that immediately set off alarm bells. Still, something about him felt wrong.